Oh, hello. I hope that you're here live. I was just wandering around all the wonderful pages that I have on my computer screen, and here you are. So great to see you. So great to learn with you, and still working on getting everything set up. But it's just about 7 o'clock, which means that we can begin. So I'm going to make sure that I get us working on the other phone so that we can connect. I would love to hear your comments as we're learning this afternoon and to be able to participate. So let's see if this is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. Thank you for your patience. It's coming up. There we go. Here you are. So great to see you. Okay. So great to learn with you. And still working on getting it. All right, now I see everybody there. I'm going to say hello to all my friends. And good, I got you here, and I got you there, and it's great. We're going to learn together. So welcome to Soul Mastery. This is the fourth class that we have been studying together. And I'm just thrilled that we've had so many positive reactions to this learning environment. The subject itself is rich with meaning. It's a very, very deep series of texts and connections to the tradition that sometimes we don't find readily accessible. And it is also not only being on top of on the surface of just some really great ideas to think about in our lives, but there's a whole path. When we speak about Mussar, it's not just simply about a text, a body of text that we study and we meditate on the ideas and cogitate them and their implications and their function in the world and appreciate or resonate with them in some way that they perhaps relate to us, or at least the way that we think we can see it in others. But there's really a practice here. Mussar is a practice. And just like anything that you practice in life, it is so that you can become a master of that practice. And some of us are obviously naturally talented in this kind of skill, and some of us are learners along the path. And I'm thrilled that you're joining us here, because wherever you are on a path of learning, wherever your interest is in deepening your connection to what we come to identify as our souls, it's this confluence of mind and confluence of emotion and confluence of some kind of expression of or connection of to what is bigger than ourselves, right? We'll call that God. We'll call that Olam Haba. We'll call that many different terms throughout our studies. But it's this idea that our intellect and our emotions, which comprise most of our sensory experience in the world, is knowable. There's a finitude to our mind and even to our emotional life. We can know those things. But to know our souls, to know that there's some greater connection beyond ourselves, there's more than just mystery. There's a lot to be understood, and there's a lot of wisdom to share. And it's my privilege to share some of that wisdom with you. So as I mentioned, this is our fourth class. We'll continue to be meeting each Thursday night at 7 o'clock for about an hour. And if anybody is interested in taking the next step and developing the practice, I am offering us to gather together in smaller groups and to learn. If you are interested in learning, you'll see my email when I bring up the text on the screen. Write me on email and I will begin to compile groups together. We have about one group forming right now, and we're looking to form as many groups as there is interest. And it'll be a thrill to study with you, if especially in this time when we're not capable of doing all the things that we are used to doing. We can really pick up on new skills and new ways of being that can help us grow. Just to think practically, like I've taken some classes in real estate, go figure. And I have been planting some vegetables in the garden, go figure. And I'm sure that you all have your wonderful experiences, and please go ahead and add them in the chat as we go throughout our learning tonight. So speaking of the chat, I will have it with us tonight. This is a large broadcast. There'll be many of us participating in the learning tonight. The chat is an excellent way for us to contribute to the learning, and we hope that you'll participate in that way as well. One last thing before we actually begin our text tonight. This is Valley Beshalom. We are on the online space, and we have been offering amazing classes and worship spaces and opportunities to connect and interact that are so meaningful, not only for our community, but really globally. We've been having incredible contact and reach from people in South America and Israel and Europe, all over the world. People are coming in to learn with us, and we welcome you here. We're glad that you're a part of our community, and welcome to be a part of all of the things that we're doing. And to learn more about it, just go to www.vbs.org/VBS at home, or actually you'll go on the front page of the website and it will bring you to all of the great content and all of the great ways for us to connect and build community together. So we're glad that you're here, and please be on the lookout for other great ways to connect to. Okay, tonight's subject is the midah, the quality that we have for us to focus on as patience. So before we even get to the text, I hope you're chuckling, because the reality is, and in full self-disclosure, I'm not a master of this yet, pause, yet, but patience is something that has been incredibly tested in this time. And just think about the kind of levels of patience. They're perhaps in our small nuclear families, and things that perhaps we were able to tolerate by going out of the house and walking around the block, we're not able to respond to. So that tests our patience. Or things that are in our community, and there's so much desire for us to return to a sense of where we can be in person with each other. And we're growing impatient as little by little we're hearing different levels of returning into the world. And we may feel a sense of impatience about the time that it's going to take for us to do that. Or even globally, right? There's things that just make this world so incredibly complicated. And there is a lack of impatience, an almost righteous impatience, that things that are so obvious to us, like caring for the needy and trying to bring peace between communities, trying to bring peace into the world. These are things that have not yet occurred. And even in a global crisis like this one, where we've seen glimmers of light that it's possible, we know that that reality is not yet manifest. And so we have a tremendous task before us, as individuals, as communities, as a society, and as societies of societies, as a global community, to practice values that we've been learning together, including this value of patience, in order for us to share our very best with the world. So let's do that together. And we are going to study our text. I have prepared a text for us to learn tonight, and I'm going to share our screen so that hopefully you can see it. Here it comes in, and all right, just a moment. Get to see all my wonderful things on my screen. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So this is our text, Savlanu. By the way, there's my email address, and you're welcome to email me privately if you would like to participate in one of our smaller learning groups. So please do so. Okay. So patience has, we have four core texts that we're going to share tonight. The first is the same text that we've been learning from Rabbi Ira Stone's wisdom from his Mussar Pathways book, and using the book from from Cheshbon HaNefesh. Rabbi Menachem Mendel Leffen of Satanoff. We'll study his text as you're already looking on the screen. We'll read Rabbi Stone's gloss, or his summary of that text. And then we'll be studying a little bit of Mesilat Yesharim from Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, which is the seminal text on Mussar work. And then we'll have a little Pirkei Avot to share. Okay, so let's take a look at our text. First, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Leffen teaches, when something bad happens to you and you did not have the power to avoid it, do not aggravate the situation even more through wasted grief. So this is the Cheshbon HaNefesh speaking about patience. It's a strange definition, right? Because you would imagine that what we were talking about is patience is a sense of kind of self-removal, a kind of suffering, a burden on the situation that patience demands, right? Just think about what it means as a parent to be patient with a child. right? A child who just has not quite understood the quality of peace and quiet in the house. And maybe one or two or three times you convey the message calmly and patiently. Could you please change the volume of your voice so that other people in the space could also be able to hear themselves think, or something similar? And then the fourth time, it's like you lose it and you lost your patience. And in your mind, you're thinking to yourself, that's it. I'm up to here. I've lost my patience. For those parents, you can understand this moment very well. For those who perhaps grew up in homes just like this, I can imagine that you've experienced this once before. Or think about things in the marketplace and how many times either you or you've seen other people behave this way. You know, right now in Southern California, for sure, traffic is down to a bare minimum. When I've had to go out, I'm surprised how many cars are out on the street. But here's one thing I do know is that it feels like Sunday every day out there. And traffic is not a problem. But when traffic bunches up and people feel like they're in a hurry to get to where they go, they lose their patience. And their patience is something that often is met with a expression of frustration or aggravation, even violent behavior. And those kinds of expressions of patience also test us. Or if we're in the shopping market and we just wanted to stop in for 3 minutes to pick up an item, and for that one day and at that one moment, there was the person in the line just in front of you, and you know you're right outside the door, you're almost there, it's only going to take you a minute to pay for your stuff and be gone, that person's credit card does not go through. Or that person has to go fumbling through their purse for the last bit of change to get precisely the right amount. And in that moment, you lose your patience. And maybe you say something snide, or maybe you just start getting very agitated. I think we're very familiar with this, let alone in workplaces where sometimes our coworkers just aren't at the right level that we're at, or even vice versa, right? Our colleagues are at a different level, we're not there yet, and we're losing patience because we don't understand where they're at. Those dynamics are very real, and it's a very, very important quality to understand. Here's what I want to just point out as we read the Cheshbon HaNefesh and then try to unpack its meaning a little bit further. What's important to understand is that when, and I'm going to stop the share for a moment. What's important to understand about patience is that when impatience happens, it's not a failure. Impatience isn't a weakness of the spirit. In fact, impatience may, at an appropriate way, be absolutely important. And the quality of patience in converse is not a virtue that exists all by itself. In fact, it's a very dangerous virtue if you're not careful. You can feel like you're being a patient person, while inside your mind you have all kinds of thoughts running amok. Thoughts of, I don't know, some kind of like glorious revenge that would come to somebody who is taking up your time, and you are being patient and waiting for them to accomplish whatever it is that they need so that you can accomplish what you need. And what I think is one of the core elements of patience is precisely that. It's precisely need. And it's important to determine the difference between needs and desires. I've been speaking about this, and I have a privilege to work on this with my students at the Valley Beshalom Day School who have weekly minyan with me. And we've been asking the question, what prayers do we need to say? And I emphasize need. We try to unpack what is it that must be said when we gather in a space of prayer? And what does it mean to experience a moment in which that prayerful experience is interrupted or interferes with our need to accomplish those prayers? And as we're unpacking that, what's important to understand is that patience or impatience isn't really about some kind of like quality of being calm, although that is an important part of it. But it's about patience is about trying to ascertain your needs in the situation and then being able to respond or react to those needs in a way that is the most helpful, productive, conducive to the moment. Sometimes that may involve an expression of, if you will, what seems to be impatience. And what's key is that whatever you express, whether it's incredible understanding and silence, or whether it's a little bit of that urgency, that it's expressed with the right intention. That's what we're going to focus on in our learning tonight. So let's go now back into our text, and we're going to see what Rabbi Iristone says. Okay? Everybody doing okay? Anybody have any questions? Go ahead and put it in the chat room. And then once we're a little bit into the text, I'll stop and take a little bit of your questions or comments or contributions. Okay, so here's what Rabbi Stone says about patience. Savlanut is the word in Hebrew for patience. And for those who understand Hebrew, saval is a burden, right? So savlanut is burdenness. It's shouldering something that you didn't intend to shoulder in order so that you could accomplish your needs. That, I think, is a good definition of what patience is. Okay? The interference of savlanut, of our patience or impatience, is something which is an easily interruptive force in our closest and most distant relationships. In other words, patience and impatience happens. It is often a physically transmitted interruption, accompanied by cues of sighing, raising an eyebrow, tapping fingers, or even looking down to check cell phones or computers while engaged with another. I can give countless examples, and I hope that you could all very, very much relate. Those are realities in our space. All of these expressions, even though we may think of them as empty or automatic reactions, diminish the person in front of us. I love that. It's a very important thing to hold on to. When we check our cell phone, right? When we take our phone and we look down at it, even though it seems like we're listening, right? What we're also doing is we're what we call multitasking. Okay. And it's become such an automatic response that we don't even realize that the reason that our distraction exists is because we've lost patience with the other. We're not listening to them. All of these reactions are within our control, he writes, and therefore a choice that we make. Savlanut is a powerful physical midah. It's a powerful physical quality, virtue. It is easy to feel it happening. By focusing on the body's reaction to impatience, we can begin to identify our need to do work in this midah very early. This allows us the opportunity to see what is possible to use kibush. Kibush means subjugation or sublimation of our impulsive behavior, our impulsive reactions, to suppress the outward action of expression before it even occurs, he says. It is possible to change our reaction by avoiding the expression of impatience and therefore more deeply honor the person who is the other and the relationship that is being experienced, right? So take my kids in the minyan and ask them about what prayers do we need to say, and the concern about the interruption of other words or other expressions that can frustrate that or complicate that or limit our ability to accomplish our needs. How do we react to them? Now, in a prayerful space, as I'm talking with my students, and as I hope you hear as well, that opportunity is to fill the space between with something that can be inspirational, that can be uplifting, that can be transformative. That's why the words are in the book that way. And think about the same thing when you're talking about relationships. If you're feeling a little bit of impatience and you know that your need has to be met, whatever it is, whether you want it to be quiet in your house or whether you want to explain to your dear beloved friend who snores at night that maybe they ought to consider something on their nose to open up their air passages. I don't know. Just go figure where I get these suggestions, not in my home, but that's why my wife isn't here to correct me. Whatever those moments are, what you have to do is determine what is your need. And patience is about trying to align yourself with your needs and understand what your reaction is in the meantime when your needs aren't immediately being met. Let's continue. Violence, pain, and suffering are an intrinsic part of each person's experience in the world. Everybody suffers, so says the rabbi. Savlanut both recognizes this fact and helps to guide us in the face of this fact. The ability to cultivate patience or sufferance, that's the burden of something that you don't want on your shoulders, in the face of the smallest inconveniences of life, is connected to a much larger and deeper level of spiritual accomplishment. Savlanut presents us with the opportunity to explore our soul's vulnerability as we move outward into the world. And what exactly is the source of the soul's vulnerability? Obviously, it is the other, right? When do you feel impatient? When somebody is encroaching upon your soul, or so it feels to be the case. The other, and here even the rabbi wants to think about the other very much in like spiritual terms, even in theological cosmic terms, right? This is the other extended infinitely, right? The future is unpredictable. The other is as potentially as mired in the grip of his or her Yetzer Hara as we are, or as the self is. In other words, this last thing, because the future is unpredictable, we're caught up in a feedback loop of what the future is going to be based on our reaction to the particular moment. And that prompts our impatience. So what we must do to practice real patience is to break the feedback loop, is to break the sense that what the future is going to be is something that burdens us in such a way that we cannot react. That is a quality of patience that demands practice. And if you can cultivate it, if you can master it, it not only makes you a fine soul, but it helps radiate to other souls to help them be fine souls as well. So I want to pause for a second. I'm going to invite anybody who has a comment or any contribution to share, go ahead and type it into the comment box. If everybody's doing good, give me thumbs up, react with hearts, react with thumbs up. I love it all. I hope we're enjoying the learning so far. As we're doing that, go ahead and keep typing it in. I want to go back to the beginning of the text, go back to the Cheshbon Nefesh, right? And listen to what everything that we've been saying before, now reread what he says. When something bad happens to you and you did not have the power to avoid it, do not aggravate the situation even more through wasted grief, right? So wasted grief there is the practice of patience. That's, I think, something that we can relate to. And that's what I think that the Cheshbon Nefesh is saying. All right, any comments? See some thumbs up. I love them. I see some hearts. I love them. I'm so glad you're with me. Let's continue. Thus, so now we're in the last part of the rabbi's teaching. Thus, Savlanut requires that we experience this threat and nonetheless agree to suffer it, right? We're not going to waste our grief about it. We're going to accept it. Our impatience comes from a feeling like somebody else's needs are encroaching upon my needs, and therefore I am impatient and my reaction is anger, frustration, or something really negative. Patience means we're agreeing to suffer that which is not great. That doesn't mean that you have to endure it. That doesn't mean that you have to accept it, but it does mean that you have to suffer it. You have to feel it. You have to embrace it. Okay? I see the comments coming in and they're making me laugh. So thank you for so many great things. Sometimes I'm going to read my friend Suzanne, okay? And then I'm going to go back to the text. Sometimes it's a matter of deciding how important what is happening at the moment. It isn't easy to do that in the moment. Can I just tell you that our friend Suzanne is a wonderful octogenarian, and mazel tov on her life and her health. And thank you for contributing your learning and being a part of our class tonight. Thumbs up and hearts for her. Let's go back to Rabbi Ira Stone. The soul's desire for fulfillment is to eliminate the threat of the other and instead to include the other as a part of the wholeness of life experience. We want to be together. We want to be connected. Patience and impatience is what separates us. So sometimes you have to suffer the needs of the other in order for them to be close to you. Suffer doesn't mean acceptance, but it does mean understanding where they are. This desire operates minimally on two levels. On the level of kibush, remember that's like subjugation. It exists as a desire to minimize the pain implicit in the encounter with the other. On the level of tikkun, it exists as the desire to transform that pain into pleasure on behalf of the other. Okay? Rabbi Stone and the Mussar tradition is going to talk about these two counterweights. Kibush, which is the subjugation of the self, or it's the subjugation of the impulse, and tikkun, which is the uplifting of the soul, and it is the correction of the connection when you make a soul connection. That's what tikkun is, right? So when a moment precipitates that may prompt impatience, if you can practice a way of turning it into tikkun, in a way of not only suffering the moment, but transforming it into a way of building a connection, uplifting yourself and the other, it can be something pleasurable. Even the word joy is possible, as he reads, right? There is no conventional vocabulary to name this experience, except joy. But joy, he writes, sometimes small and sometimes great, is an experience that we are all at least a little familiar with when we indeed allow ourselves to put the self on hold even for a moment. Therefore, we use our traditional language of olam haba to describe this experience, right? That when you accept the burden of the other and you transform it to a place of tikkun, of connection, that is olam haba. That's a world redeemed. That's a world that's closer and better and more whole. It's a very human, a very practical response to what we're feeling. This joy is fragile, but motivational, right? It seems worth it to me. That when we're talking about patience and impatience, and we're trying to understand that this isn't just simply about being a kinder person. This isn't just simply about sucking it up when somebody is doing something that's getting in your way. This isn't just about being angry and frustrated and really upset about the situation that you're living in and expressing that frustration to other people. Maybe even apologizing, I'm angry. Or in our house, that sometimes happens, we get hangry when we haven't eaten a good meal. We get a little bit agitated, right? And we get frustrated. That kind of feeling is not exactly what it is to be a master of patience, right? But the moment when you practice real patience, which isn't just sort of suffering the frustration of the moment, but it's actually when you can create a deeper connection, hopefully when the person knows that you're doing this. But sometimes even if the person doesn't know that you're practicing this, you feel joy. And actually the truth is, when somebody's impatient and they don't understand the magnitude of suffering that their impatience is causing you, and you transform that moment into one that can bring connection in a meaningful way, that joy that you experience can even bring that person a sense of, as we talked about last week, menuchat nefesh, calmness and equanimity, and even a sense of joy themselves. This work is exactly what we're talking about. I'm looking at my phone where the comments are, and it says, hangry is not an example of being patient. I assume that's what you meant, my dear teacher and friend Sigalit. I hope that's what you meant. Anybody else, any other comments? Awesome. Now, let's go into Mesilat Yesharim. This is Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and this is the book itself. And by the way, I've showed this before. This is the book I highly recommend if you're going to study this text, that you can pick up this book, okay? But I will also tell you that if you just want to read the text and you don't want the commentary, you can find it on Safaria, which I think is an incredible online tool with a very vast wealth of text from all aspects of tradition, including modern commentators and hundreds of source texts that colleagues currently today are posting up for everyone to learn from. It's just a great tool. And on Safaria, they have Mesilat Yesharim. So Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, right? He's writing in the 1700s. And this is his 5th chapter. It's broken down. Basically, his goal is to reach what's called chassidut, saintliness, right? True piety. And it's not a person who shuckles and davens every day, right? It's a person that is a master of his soul. It's a person who's a master of all these qualities. And a master isn't just an occasional practitioner, an amateur. Those are really good things, by the way, but a person who always is able to practice this. And if you're a very good student of it, it is not an easy journey to make. And for those who are really good students of this, it is a lifelong journey. So here's what he says in chapter 5. He says, regarding worldly involvement and preoccupation, we have already spoken about this earlier. For while a person, mind you, the translation, is occupied in his worldly affairs, his thoughts are bound by the chains of the burden that weighs on them, and it is impossible for him to give thought to his deeds. In other words, life is busy. Things happen. Man, people get in our ways. It's tough. It's tough out there. People cut us off on the road. People are long in the shopping lines waiting to check out for buying their goods, right? Our kids are frustrating. Our parents are frustrating. Our partners are frustrating. That's the world. But considering this, says Chaim Luzzatto, our sages, peace be upon them, taught, minimize your world occupations and toil in the Torah. Now you might read this to say, forget the world and study the Torah. Boy, if it were only so. And for some, maybe that's a reality. I don't think that's what he's trying to get at. I think it's toil in the Torah in a much more global sense. So let's read what he means. Occupying oneself to obtain a livelihood is indeed necessary, but it is not necessary to occupy oneself to such an extent that he has no room left for service of God. For this, we were commanded to fix times for Torah study. In other words, it's important to be in the world. But if you only are spending time in the world and you're not occupying yourself with the qualities to improve your soul, you're gonna be impatient a heck of a lot more. And this idea that just even a little bit of time today, and I'm so grateful that you tuned in right now and you're listening, and hopefully you're watching this tomorrow, and whenever you sort of stumble upon this, you'll learn this. This is the stuff that we just take a few minutes out of our day and we really reflect on these qualities. That's what it means to live with a life of Torah. So then he says, for this, we were commanded to fix times of Torah study. In other words, it's not just something that, comes in mind when there's nothing better to do, but we had to make sure that it was regimented, a part of our life, a way of being. We've already pointed out that this is the most essential of all things for acquiring watchfulness or zihirut, or being careful about our behavior, right? Which is what patience sort of embodies too. As the Baraita of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair states, Torah brings to watchfulness. That's another text from the rabbinic tradition. And he's basically saying that once you study Torah, it brings you to this awareness that your behavior may not be consistent with the wisdom that you've been learning. Without Torah, one will not reach it at all. And this is true. There is no one that walks the face of the planet that doesn't have wisdom to embody their decision-making. There are those that think that they understand this innately. There are those among us that will say, I don't have time for patience, which is an ironic statement. I don't have time for patience. I'm too busy trying to accomplish what my very busy brain is trying to get out into the world. That is a life without Torah, even for those who study Torah. And so this is why our sages continue to say, an ignorant man cannot be pious. For the Creator, blessed be He, who created the evil inclination, also created the Torah as its antidote. As our blessed sages of memory have stated, I have created the evil inclination, and I have created the Torah as its antidote. See, look, he's got proof positive. So anybody else who wants to add a comment on the Ramchal, that's his shorthand, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Ramchal, on his first insight about watchfulness. I want to just point out, I think that the mastery of this line is here. We must indeed toil. We have to toil for worldly goods. And the challenge that we have in our life is that because we're in the world with not only people that don't necessarily see the things that we see, not even paying attention to the things that we're paying attention to, but can also detract us from our ability to be the way that we want to be, that those challenges need our practice so that we can behave the best that we can be. Okay, let's continue on a little bit. Unless there's any comments, please go ahead. Feel free, add comments, questions, anything that you can add, and we'll definitely try and respond to it. Okay. Wait for about 5 seconds. Let's continue. Don't hesitate to put it in the comment chat if we keep moving on. Our rabbis taught, this is about patience and listening. And I'll tell you why I shared this. Some of my other students have known that we saw this text. This is one of my favorite texts and an important text to learn. Our rabbis taught the Shema, the word which says, listen or hear, must be recited as it's written. Right? You can't just say, Shema, well, I think I know what that's all about. No, it's Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, according to the rabbis. And so far, I'm going to do this. How's that? Give me a thumbs up if that's a little bit better. So it says, the Shema must be recited as it's written. In other words, there is Torah and it is immutable. And the Shema is immutable. The sages, however, say that it may be recited in any language. Isn't that great? You could say, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And if you mean it when you say it, as we'll discuss, it is as valid as if you said it in Hebrew, in Aramaic, in Swahili, if it's been translated to that language, or whatever language in the world is spoken. Why they say that is obvious, right? It's that the words themselves are immutable, but what's necessary is about your expression. So what is rabbis? That's Yehuda Nasi's reason. Well, it's written to the Torah in the very words itself of the Shema, and they shall be v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh, meaning the words as they are written are as they will remain. And what is the reasoning of the rest of the rabbis? The Torah says, hear, Shema, implying in any language that you understand. Rabbi must also see that here is written, that Shema is written. In other words, the rabbis are playing, right? Are these two in disagreement? It seems like they're saying opposite things. No. Here, they're trying to teach this one last piece, the word for another teaching. Make your ear hear what your mouth utters. And both of these things now become true, right? Whatever language that you're expressing when it comes to the Shema, you need to hear it. My colleague and teacher, David Wolpe, said a great thing, which I say all the time, and I share it again tonight. I don't think it's true for every circumstance, but it is definitely true here. He said, Jews don't listen, they wait. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that beyond the Jewish world with anybody who understands that sometimes our patience overcomes or overwhelms our ability to truly listen. Here's what is happening here. Listening and expression are two virtues. And when they are in sync, when they are in harmony, that is when one practices true patience. So suffering the needs of another is important. Responding so that you hear the suffering not as an encroachment upon you, but as a need that you can alleviate in the suffering of the other, whoever or whatever that is. That practice is when you make your ear hear what your mouth utters, or you make your hand grasp that what your ear hears. And I think it's great. Jews don't listen, they wait. right? Just think about that. How many times do you, have you been in conversations, especially among a very lively group of conversants who either interrupt each other in the middle of the sentence, or they're patiently waiting, that's what I think you say, until they could say something that had nothing to do with what the person said, but they really wanted to hear themselves express what they were thinking and feeling that needed to be expressed at that moment. There's a lot in that. And that's the thing about patience. You have to be careful. Being patient doesn't mean that you're being selfless or that your ego is removed from the interaction. On the contrary, you have to make sure that your patience isn't precisely filled with your ego, so that all you're doing is just waiting until your turn so that you can express what you think is important to be expressed. And I think that's the same with all kinds of applicable understandings and statements. So this is very good. And add additions. Sigalit, my friend and teacher, is also adding kavanah. That is intention, and that's when we express it. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. So as we've done this, I think if there aren't any other comments, we're good. And please feel free to add it. I want us to do a little role play. Okay. So now we're going to give a situation, and really I want you to be able to participate. I'll sort of speak it out, but if anybody can add once we get to the scenario, what your reaction to this situation is. And we want to, this is a practical situation, and you have to think about two things here. One is think about for yourself, right? How would you react if you were a person actually in that situation? And the other thing is, how would you respond to the person who is acting the way that they're acting? What kind of patience would you need to practice in order to speak to that person and help that person understand perhaps that their impatience is not only causing them harm, but even maybe causing harm to others that they didn't realize? How do you do that without being judgmental? How do you do that in the right place, in the right time? These are things to think about. And the way to do this is to just relax our mind and our body. So if you're comfortable wherever you're seated, if you're sitting up, hopefully you're not relaxed in your bed, although that's a fun thing. Maybe I should teach from my pillow in my bed and see what you think about that. Very comfy for me. I don't think it would be very exemplary or inspiring to anybody sitting across the other side of the screen. But to do this, I want you to sit up straight, take a few deep breaths in. Breathe in through the nose if you can. Breathe out through the mouth. Breathe in through the nose if you can a few times. And out through the mouth. And I want you to start thinking about just some of the text that we've gone through tonight so far. Breathe in through the mouth. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And as you're slowing your mind down, as your breath is becoming a little more modulated, I want you to let the text of the Cheshbon HaNefesh, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, wash over you. Don't let bad consequences be ruined with wasted grief. Rabbi Aristone's teaching that says that practicing true patience is an experience of joy. Or Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto's teaching, which says that studying Torah, being conscious and practicing these behaviors is what will help you embrace the world, which is a necessary part of our life, with the very best of your soul. And I want you to let those wash over you as we read the next scenario. Okay, so let's go. What would you do? A woman is standing in line, waiting to check out books from the library. It is uncomfortably cold in the library. The line is long and there's only one person checking out the books. After 10 minutes, she is finally the next in line. The person in front of her in line starts to check out, and she learns that she owes a fine and that the book she previously returned is still marked as outstanding in her account. She needs to go back to the shelf and look for it. The woman, who has now been standing for 15 minutes, is beyond herself. She sighs impatiently and begins to contemplate whether or not to ask the librarian to shove aside the other's books and take hers instead. She can feel her blood pressure rising as she begins to boil at the librarian, who herself is looking quite upset and overwhelmed. She decides she can wait no longer and is justified in her anger at the situation. She says to the librarian, "Do I really have to wait here? Just check out my books and let me get out of here." The librarian politely and apologetically, but firmly refuses her request, saying that she had already started the checkout and it would be difficult to cancel and restart the process. The woman snaps back that this was a total waste of her time, leaves her books, and storms out. It's sad. Sad, right? But real. I mean, take out library, put in grocery market. Take out grocery market and put in waiting to get into the grocery market that we used to be able to walk into, but now have to wait an extra 20 minutes to get into. Whatever thing. Wait for all of those things that we've been waiting patiently for, and then somebody kind of like doesn't do their part, and we have to wait a little while longer. What would you do? So go ahead, put it in the chat. What would you do? Let me just give you a couple of things as that is coming in. Clearly, we can relate to this. This seems like a very understandable circumstance, doesn't it? Right? That we're just out in the world and doing our things. It's a library of all places. We're trying to educate ourselves. But what's happening here is threefold. One is the person who didn't have it right at the counter, had to go back and get the book, and probably feels a little bit of embarrassment, frustration, maybe impatience herself. And then you have the person sitting behind the counter doing the checkout. And that person is feeling frustrated, is a little upset that the person didn't get it right, but is emphatic about doing the job correctly and has committed to that despite the impatience that this person feels. And thirdly, you have the woman. The woman who was waiting in line seemed to be kind of like tolerating 10 minutes. It was busier than usual, but all of a sudden it became 15 minutes. Maybe it was going to be even 20 minutes. And it was well beyond the time that she had allocated for whatever matrix of time that she had calculated in her day to spend at the library. She simply lost it, dropped her books, and left. Sad, right? Sad because all three are suffering right now, right? The person who didn't get it right is suffering because they didn't get it right. And they don't like to be wrong. They want to fix the problem. They recognize that people are behind them. They waited in line too. So they're probably feeling a little bit of upset and probably could use someone somewhere, somehow to express a little bit more tolerance. Then you have the person behind the counter who's feeling that not only the impatience of the person who didn't get it right, but also the impatience of the people that are starting to get fidgety and agitated in the line behind her. I wonder if those people are suffering that as well. And that person is suffering in that moment, right? It's not suffering like a physical pain, torture, but boy, it's a torture of the soul. And that person is feeling a suffering. And then that third person, she's suffering as well. So what would you do? Would you just come in and give everybody a hug? Boy, I love to do that. But in the age of social distancing, this is never going to happen ever again. Besides the fact that before then, a random person giving people hugs seems very dangerous and suspicious. So won't be doing that. Can't just give people hugs. And it's probably not making a whole lot of sense for me to turn around and come back to them and say, okay, everybody, just chill out. Don't worry, relax. This is going to be all over in 5 minutes, right? Somebody might feel that they're being patronized and only aggravate and frustrate their impatience. Or maybe you're the person who's going to just kind of like continue to suffer the fact that this moment happens. Maybe the fact that you are the person behind the person that got frustrated and you still have to wait longer than you wanted. And maybe as you're watching this happen, you call the person that you're waiting, that's waiting for you, the next person, the next responsibility that you have to accomplish. And you express that you're going to be running a little bit behind. Any one of these things seems great. So my friend Roberta, thanks for putting it in. We all need a virtual hug. We should just give each other hugs. We have reactions for thumbs up. We have reactions for hearts. We have reactions for clapping our hands, but we don't have virtual hugs. I think we need to develop that one on the emoji application so that we can all feel some hugs through this technology. So I asked you, as you were going through a little bit of the meditative thought, not only to think of yourself as the person who is going through this and watching this scene happening and trying to figure out how do you respond to the moment. Okay. And I think what I've been trying to present is twofold. One is, if the moment is possible, maybe not with a physical hug, and maybe not with the sort of dogmatic take charge and sort of put everybody in their place attitude, but to find the right place to kind of express something that lets everybody know that this is a difficult moment and that you are experiencing it with them and that their experience is not something that they're going through alone. That's actually really beautiful. And to be able to do that is something that you do when you practice patience. But then I also want you to ask yourself about, what would it be like for you to be that person waiting to check out their books? You're not the person behind her. You're her. And at that moment, when you've decided that 15 minutes was your limit, what would you do? How would you do it differently, I think is the question. How would the learning that we've been exploring together tonight, how would the learning transform your thinking? How would you apply that? So I have a comment, and I'm going to put it, I relate to all of this. It's happened to me. Running errands late in the day when I'm tired and not as patient as I should be. Thankfully, it's not showing me the rest of it. But thankfully, you are a good practitioner. I'm going to fill the sentence in. Maybe you said it differently. I like what I'm about to add. Thankfully, you're a practitioner of Mussar, and your patience is something that you are able to practice in that moment and figure out how to adjust your expectations so that you can accomplish your need and also not cause harm through your abrupt, impulsive, perhaps violent, perhaps destructive behavior. That's really great. Oh, thankfully, you're pretty good at holding in my outward expressions. That's true, right? Holding in your outward expressions is good, and transforming those inward feelings to being feelings which bear the suffering of others and have compassion in places where even you're feeling impatient, that's good. Library speed and customer patience are on two sides of human understanding. Patience is golden. Humanity is almost godly. What if it was that person's first chance out of the house in weeks? What if she finished Shiva and it's her first day out, and if they have a sick family member at home? Yes, right? There's another element of this. A person's impatience may not just simply be manifest by the circumstances of the moment at all, but rather what it's trying to say is that a person, in whatever experience it is, whatever's happening, they are suffering. And our experience of suffering, because we're good human beings and we care about other human beings, is to alleviate the suffering of others. That's a purpose that we take upon ourselves. The moment that we turn aside from the suffering of others is the moment that we lose a little piece of our humanity. Patience is the virtue that enables us to see that which is being suffered for just the right amount of time to transform it into something positive. I want to share, Suzanne also added, I might ask the librarian if there's someone else who can check me out. Yeah, right? Maybe start to take control of the situation, but to do it in a kindly way. So, there's, like I said, virtual hug, take control of the situation, wait for the golden moment to express something that lets everybody know that this is not an ideal situation. Those are diffusive actions that can also create a sense of joy, a sense of equanimity, a sense of patience in everybody. Here's my last text, and then with this we'll conclude. It's one of my favorite texts from Pirkei Avot. So here comes the last text. And it's basically, built on what was said before, right? From one of the last comments. Okay. So this is a great text. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, don't try to appease your friend during his hour of anger, nor comfort him at the hour while his dead still lies before him. Excuse me. Nor question him at the hour of his vow, nor strive to see him in the hour of his disgrace or embarrassment. In other words, here are 4 moments in which your reaction is not, it should not be immediate. And I think that this is the thing to think about why. Okay, so let's go to the 4. 1, don't try to make your friend feel better when they're angry, right? Don't tell them like, oh, it's not so bad, or don't be angry, right? Like if you try to stop somebody who's angry, they've already gone over the ledge. And for you to try and go get them would be dangerous and pull you over the ledge with them. Okay. Don't comfort a person when they've experienced a loss while they've experienced the grief of a loss right before them. Nothing can be more painful than somebody coming up and saying, it'll get better. He's in a better place. She's happier. She was suffering too long and it's all better. Those are words of comfort and they have their place in their time. But to say that right in the moment when somebody's experiencing a loss, that's terrible. It's hard. And I just hope that you'll listen to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar and practice the right time for this. Okay? Nor question him at the hour of his vow. Somebody just made a big, huge investment in something. And the last thing that you could do is say, are you sure? That would not be a way of conveying a sense of confidence or savlanut. And finally, don't try to see somebody the moment they're embarrassed, right? And what do all these 4 moments have in common? Anger, grief, uncertainty, and embarrassment. They're all vulnerabilities. Their souls are vulnerable. And in one's soul's vulnerability, and you can relate to this as well, when you feel vulnerable, the thing that you need the most when you're ready to accept it is someone to hold your soul. And if you are incapable of holding someone's soul when you are feeling a sense of impatience at their experience, or it's your need that you have to express comfort or appeasement or question or try to like make somebody feel better, right? That's not an expression of patience. That's an expression of your own ego. And that's what makes this text so powerful. And that's what brings us to the conclusion of what patience is all about. Situations are bad. They're very real. Bad situations happen, and we're not sure what people's experiences are that precipitate sometimes their less than ideal responses and reactions in the world. That's the others. And if the text is correct, that our goal in patience is not for us to feel better about the uncertainty of the situation, but us to be able to help others through their uncertainty and share our mutual needs. If that is the goal, then that goal is something that has to take place at the right place and the right time. And that kind of work is something that Mussar tradition, that this virtue of patience is enabling us to spend time and explore. And I hope that as the week unfolds, this is a time of great impatience. There is a lot of things that are out there that are agitating us. It's exciting. There's so much possibility that we may actually in time be together again. It's a reality. And while that is a reality coming into focus, it's not yet. And in the not yets of our moments right now, what we have to ask ourselves is, what do we need? What is it that we really need? And if we really need people that care about us and the ability to care about others, and if we really need that our material and our physical needs are met, and that we're ensuring that the material and physical needs of others are being met, then that's what we're going to be focused on. And if we need to make sure that our mind and our heart and our soul are being nourished, and we're doing those, then those things are the things that we should focus on, because whenever we're able to return to be together, and that is an important need that we'll have to fulfill. In the meantime, our goal is to be ready for that moment, to prepare so that our patience is the very best quality of connection that we share with our loved ones and our friends when we have the ability to be in contact with them. So I'm just going to ask if there's any more comments or questions. Thank you, everybody, for commenting in the chat. I'm really glad that we had a chance to learn together. We're coming to the end of our class time. It's wonderful. Mussar in an hour. I never thought it was possible, but it's been possible. So please join us next week as we continue with the next qualities, the next midot that we'll be studying together. And in those qualities and virtues, we'll keep taking very deep and very thoughtful understandings, not only of the wisdom of the tradition, but how to apply it today, right? So everybody have a wonderful night. For those celebrating Shabbat, we wish you a very early Shabbat Shalom. For those who've been joining us on Facebook, I welcome you. Once again, I'm going to offer, if anybody would like to learn this in a small group and to go more intensely, there's deeper text to study and a lot more practice that is involved with this, because talking about it is great, and practicing it and living it and grappling with it and understanding where we're failing and where we're succeeding is a very, very important practice to become a soul master. And I invite you to join me in small groups as well on that journey. Have a fantastic evening. Shabbat Shalom again. Take care.